right, so we're ready to continue with our construction of the Raspberry Pi touchscreen monitor. In the previous video, I flashed the SD card, put the Noobs operating system on it. So if you haven't already done that, please go back and do that. That's important because it's very difficult once the Raspberry Pi is installed in the monitor. It's very difficult to get access to the SD card slot and to slip it in and out. So I'm going to take the SD card out and hold it the right way or insert it the right way. Remember, the contacts have to be facing up, right? So I'll push that in here and insert that. And then I want to go ahead and put the heat sinks again, because this is all preparatory stuff to putting the Raspberry Pi in the monitor. So let's go ahead and put the heat sinks on. So I'll peel back the blue backing here, and the large rectangular heat sink goes on the CPU on the Raspberry Pi. The small rectangular heat sink goes on the chip right next to it. Right. And then the smallest one, small square heatsink, there we go, is going to go on the small square chip right there. Okay, so now it doesn't matter whether the fins, the fins on the heatsink are pointed vertically or horizontally. That doesn't make any difference. We just want to get those on there. Okay, so we've got the SD card, micro SD card inserted. We have the heat sinks on. Now we're ready to start working on some of the board, the features to get the board in. So I'm going to put the Raspberry Pi to the side and get this open. So, all right. And so let's go ahead and turn this over, and we can start to take these screws out. Now, these screws might be a little bit hard for you to get out. I've already taken this apart once or twice, so the screws here are a little bit easier for me to take out. So this is where maybe a larger screwdriver, larger in the handle region, is going to be helpful. You have to be careful with this. Obviously, this is a monitor, so we want to make sure that we don't damage it trying to remove the screws. You will note, let me go ahead and show you this. Let's see if I can focus it in there. This is the screw for the back of the monitor. This is the screw to attach the monitor, the Raspberry Pi to the monitor board. So you can see that there is a size difference. Okay, so you just want to make sure not to put the wrong screw in. Obviously it won't fit, but try not to get them mixed up. So I got that in there. Okay, so I've removed 5 of the screws here. There is a 6th screw, and you have to open this up, and this can be a little bit tough to open up, but there we go. We open that up here. Okay. And get that. And we can close this down a little bit. Now, be careful when you're removing the back panel here, because there is a wire attached to it, and you can see right there, it's attached to the fan, so we don't want to yank that open or anything like that. We don't want to mess up that wire. Okay. So, and actually, let me turn this around carefully to get this. Oops. Well, we'll leave that off because we're going to have to remove it anyway. There we go. Okay. So that's a better angle for me to work. Maybe for, you want to do the same so you're putting everything in correctly. All right, so, and I pulled off the side panel, so we'll talk about that in a second. All right, so now the board is going to go in just like this, okay? And you can see the mounting holes here, the mounting tabs, right? And so that's where the board is going to go right there, okay? Now, and you can see access to the SD card is very tough. If we didn't have the SD card already in there, I don't know whether I could get that in there. Maybe somebody with more nimble fingers could, but it's better to just get it in there ahead of time. All right. And so the next thing we need to do is we need to get these two adapter boards into the Raspberry Pi, because they are going to sit right on these pins right there. And so we need the HDMI D adapter board right there, and I'll just put that right there. And then we also need the Type C adapter board. And I'll put this on this side. Okay, so HDMI D and Type C. So the HDMI D, and again, all this, you want to be as delicate as you can. HDMI D is going to go into this micro HDMI D slot. So I'm just going to put that in there, make sure it's nice and seated well. And then the Type C is going to go into this. This is the Type C goes into the power connection, the power port, right? So this is a micro HDMI port, and we put that in there, and then this is going to go right there. And basically what we're doing is we're connecting in this adapter board, we're connecting the power to the Raspberry Pi to the power connection for the monitor board. This is the monitor board right here. I'm calling this the whole shebang here, the monitor board. And then the HDMI D, of course, is going to connect the Raspberry Pi to the HDMI connection for the board. So you can see where this is going to go, and you really have to be careful here. I've done this a couple of times, and I was more nervous. Actually, I think I'm wrong here. I want this, sorry about that. I want this one to go in, the HDMI D to go in the one adjacent to the Type C, okay? Because it's going to go right there. So as I was saying, I've done this a couple times, and removing it is definitely more precarious than inserting it. But the idea is we want to insert these pinholes directly over the pins, and we don't want to miss any. So I'm going to turn on this light for me right here just so I can see. I'm sorry about the glare on that, but we're going to put that right in there and cross our fingers that we get that in there. That looks good. And once you feel like you've got it in there good, then you just want to push directly down, not at an angle, gently but firmly. Okay? So now I have that positioned, and I can turn off this. Well, you know what? I'll leave that light on. I know it's a little bit glary for you, but I think it's still going to be fine. Now, we have here, and I debated the order of putting this together here, but you can see that the board is kind of in position. I haven't screwed it down yet, which is important, but I want to take my Pi 4 side panel, and I want to get that into position, okay? So my side panel here is going to be positioned with the Pi 4 down adjacent to the screen. And this is where, again, we have to be kind of careful here. I want to put this, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pull this up just a little bit and slide that down like so. It's going to be a little bit, there we go. Okay. So that was probably the most difficult part of the whole construction. Getting these into position, getting them down properly, and then putting the side panel in before we screw this down. All right, so let's see where we are now. We want to mount the, where's my screwdriver? We want to mount the board to the Raspberry Pi to the monitor board. So I'm just going to put the correct screws, right, the smaller screws in there. You don't need to crank this down really tight. You know, just snug is fine as long as it's not rattling around. There's no reason to over tighten it. We get that in there. This is definitely where a magnetized screwdriver tip really comes in handy. There we go. All right, and we're almost done. Last but not least, we need to insert our connection from the 3-pin right here to the to one of the USB ports over here. So now here, we want to feed it through. I don't know whether you can see this over here. Let me try to angle this a bit. We want to feed this through. We got two holes right here, right? And we want to feed it through. I suggest feeding it through the bottom one, but you know, it really doesn't matter, just whatever. So I'm going to feed it through there. And be careful of the orientation, okay? It's a little bit tough to see, but you can see there's a little pin. I can't really show it to you any better than that, but there's a little bump right in the middle of this pin connector, right there. And that little bump is going to go on that side right there, okay? So I'm going to rotate this around. And again, this is maybe those of you with smaller fingers can work this right. And I'm going to gently push it in there. There we go. Make sure it's seated well. And then I'm just going to plug this into a USB slot. Make sure we get it rotated properly. There we go. And that's it. And we're done. All right. So now let me just make sure that's seated properly. Everything is good. Now I'm going to put this back on. We'll screw the panel back. Again, don't over tighten it. If you need to get access to it, you know, you don't want to have to really struggle to get these screws out. Snug is good enough. And we'll get this last screw in the hidden hole there. There we go. And we'll put that back down there like that. And then there we go. Okay. So we have the monitor all connected. You can see on this side the connection from the Raspberry Pi into the board through the USB. Everything's all nice and snug. It's all good. All right. And in the next video then, we'll get the power going to this and see what we have on our Raspberry Pi.